Colonel, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mario. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure's mine, as always. We were planning to discuss one thing, and then we had an attack, a pretty significant attack on Kuwait, on both bases, both U.S. bases in Kuwait. So I got reports of explosions in the Qashm Island, and then we had reports of sirens in Kuwait, and then interceptions. And by the way, KKF, there's videos on my X account. You can play those if you want while I go through it. And then we had reports of potential impact, unconfirmed. And the targets were the Ali Al Salam Air Base and the other base, I think Camp something. I can't remember what it's called. You might know what it's called.
Camp Buehring.
Not Camp Buehring, another one.
Camp Arif John.
Kuwait. Yes, that's the one in Kuwait. So these were the two targets. Oh, wow. Reports of more missile launches as we speak.
Yeah.
And more sirens in Kuwait. It's ongoing.
It is. I see this will be ongoing for the foreseeable future in terms of within, in the next hour of time, there will probably be multiple launches and exchanges and counterfire.
That is very significant. So this is the sound of the explosion. Start it again, KK.
Sure.
Let me know if it sounds like impact. It'll start again now, Anthony. But let me know if it sounds like impact or interceptions.
Oh, yeah. Sure, it's fucking there. Yeah.
That was certainly an impact.
Sure.
Okay, that does sound like an impact. That's the authorities responding. So you could do without audio, KK, unless the audio is worth it. So there's more launches coming from Iran against Kuwait. Why do you think they're targeting Kuwait? What do you make of these attacks? It seemed everything was getting better. Trump was scrambling to make sure Israel does not attack Beirut. What do you think happened?
So a couple things in the last 24 hours. We know that the Iranians have suspended negotiations or peace talks. So that's kind of on the back burner. So any conversation or narrative coming from the United States, from the president or from the cabinet indicating any type of progress in peace talks is simply not true, at least from the end of the other negotiator being Iran. Why Kuwait? Well, we do know that the U.S. Central Command commander has requested the Dark Eagle hypersonic ballistic missile. That has to be launched within a certain area in order to have the maximum range to hit whatever target it may be used to hit. And that could be a nuclear facility, that could be Tehran, that could be a strategic location that's been identified by U.S. Central Command intelligence. The most likely place to launch that would either be from the UAE, which is a little bit too close for comfort, and the other alternative being Kuwait. And the place to do that, where the erector launcher are located that could be staged to do it, would be Kuwait. Potentially, highly potential would be Kuwait, either at Camp Arif John, which I've been to many times. It is the headquarters of U.S. Army Central Forward. So not of U.S. Central Command, but of U.S. Army Central. And then Ali Al Salim, which is also another major air base in Kuwait. If you recall, that was the location that a few years ago took some pretty significant fire, where service members received quite a bit of injury in terms of concussions and traumatic brain injury. Another strategic base. So I could foresee that if the United States were going to launch the Dark Eagle, that its entry into the region would probably come through Kuwait City and then be staged at Camp Arif John for potential movement to and then launch from Ali Al Salim Air Base. That is where we have had Patriot systems before. So I could see Kuwait being a very important target for Iran in terms of what they see as an imminent threat of additional strikes. Not only naval strikes from naval vessels, naval platforms in the Gulf, but potentially from the UAE, from Israel, and from potentially Kuwait. And if Israel is preparing for what they seem to be inevitable counterstrikes from Iran in northern Israel, based on their strikes forthcoming, which are likely imminent against Beirut, I could see that we probably wouldn't want to put the Dark Eagle in Israel. Kuwait would be a logical substitute. So I think Iran has intelligence that indicates that, and why they're so heavily targeting Kuwait in the last 24 hours.
Interesting. Okay. So you're saying, let me just give an update here. 3 explosions that have been reported in Kuwait, according to one source here. So they're saying impact in Kuwait again. How are they not able to intercept 3 missiles here, 3 missiles there? They're not. We're not talking about 100 missiles like Russia against Ukraine.
Well, so consider this: the air defense capability that resides in Kuwait. Remember, in the opening days of the conflict, the radar system, the regional geospatial IR infrared electronic warfare, the full suite of radar capability, that was taken out. That big golf ball looking dome that was hit by Iran that wiped out a lot of radar interdiction capability, that's right there in Kuwait. So that's been taken out. So Kuwait does not have a robust organic air defense capability system like the Iron Dome or David Sling. Their system is much more based on the traditional method with Patriot systems, counter battery fire, which is largely provided by the United States. The United States is critically low in interdiction or counterfire munitions, such as the JASSM, the PRISM, the ATACMS, the Patriot missile system, the SAM-3 or the ASM-3, the ASM-6, critically short on these, like into the single digits in some cases. Certainly with the PRISM and the ATACM and the Patriot system in the single digits. So the United States has allocated that to the defense of Israel. That's being used to supplement the Iron Dome or what's left of it. So there are some capability in Kuwait, but it's very rudimentary. It's what I would call basic when comparing it to Iron Dome or David Sling or other like the organic capability that the UAE might have. So Kuwait is relying a lot on a U.S. defense system that is critically short and critically degraded.
But
so yeah,
I understand it's short and degraded, Anthony, but we're talking about 3 missiles. We're not talking about 150, 3 missiles and 2 missiles. Apparently this attack had 2 missiles that we're hearing unconfirmed reports of impact. And the first wave was 3, 4, 5, single digits. Are you...
Well, in terms of what we saw, 3 missiles. We don't know what Iran launched in terms of a preparatory electronic warfare attack to fool the radar system into what is actually coming. We don't know what the radar saw. We saw 3 missiles. What the radar saw could have been an array of missiles trying to determine what to hit. If I was Iran at this juncture, knowing that the United States and its allies are short on munitions to interdict, I would use my exquisite cyber and asymmetric warfare capability to fool the system. And we do this often. We do this quite often, where you fool the electronic system into thinking that there's more missiles. It overrides the system to confuse, where do I shoot? What do I hit? So we saw 3 missiles. What the radar saw in the electromagnetic spectrum could be much different. The fact that those 3 missiles made it through, I think that Iran is using its cyber capability to spoof the limited radar capability. That's what I would do.
And maybe we're seeing as you said, the consequences of the radars that were destroyed. Everyone's been talking about these radars being destroyed, makes the area more vulnerable. Absolutely. This could be why.
Absolutely. Remember, radar is only as good, you have to have an array for the ability to look at high altitude, low altitude, mid altitude, various speeds. One radar can't do it all. We had a radar that could do almost it all, which was taken out. So now we have various radar systems that can kind of do an individual piece. But if you can spoof that, a lower technology radar where you can spoof what it sees, you're much more likely to be successful with what the real missiles are coming in. So what I would suspect and what I would do if I was, in the seat in the IRGC, I would first send out electronic countermeasures with a real missile. So you're fooling the system, but you're also sending in something real. Then fire again with additional missiles and more spoofing, because you're conditioning and tricking the radars. We do it all the time. The United States does it. So I clearly assume that Iran.
Colonel, I think alerts in Bahrain.
What's that?
Alerts in Bahrain, man.
Yeah, this is I suspected that Iran's response to the negotiations ending, that they're going to up this a level. They're going to bring this up a level. UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain. Remember, Bahrain is where the U.S. Fifth Fleet, U.S. Navy Central, that is the naval element of U.S. Central Command, is still headquartered in Bahrain. They have moved some of it to Israel and to out of the direct region, but the headquarters, it's still there. It's a viable, valuable military target. So yeah, Bahrain, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Israel, they're all on the target list.
Let me turn off the Bluetooth connection on my phones, because if they attack the UAE and the sirens go off, it will disconnect from here. I had it happen during the war. So let's just prepare. And so I'm surprised they've struck Kuwait and Bahrain and not the UAE. So I don't know what deal happened between Iran and the UAE, but there's something there happening behind the scenes, because the UAE was their favorite place to strike.
Oh, I think that there are rifts, right? Certainly with Oman, where the United States said, "Hey, Oman, if you don't step away from this Hormuz deal, we're going to obliterate you too." And so Oman is like, backdoor, "Hey, Iran, we're your buddy." I can only imagine that there's also backdoor negotiation talks happening or have happened with the UAE and the refined target. Remember, in these times that Donald Trump is saying that there's negotiation and there's not, the Iranian intelligence and Iranian RGC and Iranian naval forces and Iranian missile forces are not just sitting on their hands waiting for the U.S. to do something. They're also conducting reconnaissance, negotiations, bilateral agreements, backdoor agreements. So we're now seeing the fruit of that, which is now Iran is going to strike across the region strategically, because they too have resources that are not finite. So they've looked at what those in the military, we call this critical factor analysis, or CFA. Some people call it center of gravity analysis. Doctrinally, it's critical factors analysis. What to strike, what to target to have the most impact. And if you have a backdoor deal to kind of assuage the relationship with the UAE and with Oman, well, don't waste your missiles there. But like Kuwait, in terms of Iran's perspective of the locations that can hurt them most, Kuwait is certainly up there on the list, second only to Israel in terms of what can be launched. And there is a massive U.S. force presence in Kuwait between Camp Arif John, Camp Buehring. We have an entire division staged at Camp Buehring. And Ali al-Salim. There's significant force capability in Kuwait. So Kuwait is going to be a saturated target here in the next few hours, as well as Bahrain. We would do the same thing if the Iranian naval fleet or naval command was in Qasem Island. We would be bombing that island into dust. In fact, we're already targeting it. So Iran is simply doing what any strategy would do.
And when I asked you why, your analysis, now we added Bahrain to the mix. So your analysis of the dike. So just for the audience, there were reports a couple of months ago now, maybe, of the dark, after the ceasefire, so maybe a month and a half ago, the Dark Eagle hypersonic missile, the American hypersonic missile, which there's only a handful of them, 12, 18, whatever it is.
There's only six.
Six. Okay, there we go. Even worse. They were being moved to the region. And what you're saying, they can only be fired to have the best impact. They have to be fired from close range. And the best place is to fire them. But I thought hypersonic ballistic missiles could be fired from far away. That's the whole one of the reasons.
Well, no, so far away relatively in terms of, remember, Iran is a big place.
True. Okay.
I don't know where the
Depends on the
target in Iran is, but if that target within Iran is deep, well, then you have to bring that capability closer, because you don't want to use a hypersonic, an exquisite hypersonic that you want maximum success for the first time ever and extend it to its furthest range or the most complicated. You want an easy hit. You want an easy strike. In fact, because DARPA, the Department of the Army Research and Production Agency, the skunk works, if you will, of the United States industrial complex, if they have a congressional allocation to make 12 and they've only made 6, and the 6 that they've made aren't ready for full-scale use yet, and the U.S. Central Command commander said, hey, I need one, I need it now. And so they said, okay, let's finish up this one and give it to you, but we've never tested it at range or used it. Well, you're not going to throw it into the fourth quarter with the game tied going for the Hail Mary. You want an easy target. So you would probably put it in Kuwait. You would probably put it against a target that is going to have maximum impact and the highest rate of success. So could I see that hypersonic missile, though it can reach far distance and it can reach Mach 5, very fast, obviously, very accurate, obviously, the range on that is not as far as one would assume, like an intercontinental ballistic missile. Remember, the Fatah 110 can reach almost the same range as the Dark Eagle. The Qatar 4 and Qatar 3 can reach further than the Dark. The Dark Eagle is not the most exquisite, best hypersonic. Russia has much more. China has them. Iran has them and has tested them. So the U.S. is a little bit late to the game when it comes to hypersonics. And in this case, if we're going to use it, which I do think we're going to put it in a position that maximize. Can you imagine the strategic impact to the United States using its exquisite unveiling of the Dark Eagle and it fails and dumps into the Persian Gulf? Can you imagine that? Like, we're going to set it up for success. So if I were a military planner, if I were a joint fires officer still looking at where I would put this thing, I would put it at Ali Al Salim, because there's bunkers there, there's underground facilities there. I can protect it until I'm ready to use it. And when I am ready to use it, it's within range with a guaranteed or a higher probability of success. And again, we don't know what it might be targeting. If it's targeting something deep, even if it's targeting Tehran, remember, this thing has got to go up and over pretty far to come in to hit Tehran because of the Zagros Mountains. So it all depends on what the target is. But
so why do you think Iran is
absolutely
attacking now, though?
Go ahead.
Why now? Why now? Well, we're playing footage now of the attack on Bahrain and the previous footage of the attack on Kuwait. This one's Kuwait. Why now? I understand the risk of a Dark Eagle, but things seem, all indications, at least on the American side, the Israeli side is a different story. At least on the American side, Trump is trying to walk the hell away out of this mess. That's what the indications are pointing towards. You might see things differently, so I'd love to get your analysis. But last couple of days, calls Netanyahu, according to Axios and Channel 14, curses at him, very heated call. You see, what Axios called him a fucking idiot and all these things.
Sure.
So you've got these reports. We've also got Trump immediately saying, oh, no, the negotiations that are going, everything's fine. We should reach a deal in the next week. Rubio says the same thing. He starts talking about phase 2 of the negotiations, while Iran says, oh, the negotiations are still on halt, and starts attacking the Gulf. Something's going on here. Like the worst case scenario seems to be unfolding for the US, where it's not just a more hardline leader of Iran and IRGC. It's a vengeful one, or it's one that has potentially ambitions beyond what the pre-war Iran had. Maybe they want to weaken the Gulf more. Maybe they want to get revenge on the Gulf. Maybe they want to keep pressuring the US to leave. Maybe they want to, I don't know.
Consider a boxing match, 12 rounds. And the defender of the belt is the lead contender. That's the United States. And the contender to take the belt is Iran, unproven, haven't been fighting in a war. The United States bringing in this reputation of being the best and obviously having more munitions and more capability. Sure. And in the opening round, the contender for the belt gets a bloody nose. That's Iran. But round for round, they get in some jabs. They stay protected. They don't get knocked out. What we're seeing now is not the 12th round. What we're seeing now is about what I would say the 7th round. And in a 12-round boxing match, the 7th round is decisive in the nature of, that's when the guy that's been strategizing, the guy that's been looking for the tells, can get in some jabs. And that's what Iran is doing right now. So the way I look at it is that in 25 years of being a military officer, the way I've survived through war is I don't look at things from my perspective. I look at things from the enemy's perspective. How do they want to kill me? So in this case, I look at, if I'm Iran, how am I looking at things right now? Well, this alliance between the United States and Israel is obviously strained right now. There's something going on there. Israel is spread thin because they're also fighting in Lebanon, and they're trying to get the United States to continue fighting in Iran. The negotiations and what Donald Trump, the president of the United States, what he wants, he's not getting, and that's causing tension. There's tension in the military. The Secretary of Defense of the United States has been firing generals left and right. There's obviously some friction in the military. The military has not yet broke the code on how to get into the Strait of Hormuz successfully. So right now, when I know, Iran is basically taking the approach, don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake, but punch them in the face. That's what Iran is doing.
That's a good quote. So my
that's
thought
mine,
is the
by the
following.
way. So
I like it. I like it. Okay, I want to use it.
No, you can use it.
Right
you
now,
use it. Just
and quote you.
That's mine.
What I think is happening right now is we had the reports of explosions in Kashmir Island, and Iran.
Yes,
I think Iranian media was saying this is retaliation. So I think what's happening is Iran now, escalation dominance. Iran now, whenever something happens, what happened just now in Israel, where they want to strike Beirut, Iran's like, hey, we're going to stop negotiations, and we're going to threaten to strike Israel directly, as well as Israeli forces in Lebanon. So I think this is how escalation dominance looks like. So
absolutely.
That's because and look, to be honest, I'd still put that within pragmatism. They're still being pragmatic in their responses as long as they continue the negotiations, etc. And as long as they're not the first ones to attack. I think when I start to get worried is if I get reports that Iran attacked the US or Israel without being attacked first. I think this one is, for me, starts to look, it goes beyond pragmatism. But that hasn't happened yet. So we have a statement by Iran. Let me read it out. Just came in. In response to the provocation and blatant aggression of American terrorist forces targeting the national sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran on the beloved island of Kashmir, the airspace, by the way, KK, if you could just mute the colonel's mic just for the echo. The airspace force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, by the grace and support of Allah and in line with his commitment to protect its homeland, subjected the US occupation bases in Kuwait to precise and concentrated missile attacks, resulting in the successful destruction of their targets and the explosion of the aggressors' hideouts. The Islamic Republic Guard Corps, by announcing this initial retaliatory response, issues a firm and decisive warning to the government of the United States, the leader of global arrogance, and all of those who allow the use of their soil or airspace to violate Iran. Any new stupidity, further aggression, or any, they said stupidity, any new stupidity, further aggression, or any action that violates even the single inch of our borders and sovereignty will be met with a devastating, crushing, and decisive response that goes beyond all laws and established boundaries. Our brave forces will not hesitate to turn all the headquarters and interests of the aggressors in the region into ashes. The era of hit and run has ended, and the aggressor forces must bear the dire consequences of their ignorance and reckless adventures. That's the first time I see a statement, a response
quite
that extreme.
Was it in all caps?
No, not all caps. At least that's
okay. I was going to say, because if it was in all caps, it would have been on the Iranian version of Truth Social. But yes, as you can see, and again, as I say this, people would say, "Oh, you're an Iranian sympathizer." I'm not an Iranian sympathizer, but I am a realist. And as I've said before, I've survived 25 years of war by always looking at what the other one is doing. Because if you can think in their shoes, you can counter or predict what they might do. So look at Iran. I would say strategic narrative, information dominance. Iran has won that thus far. Iran has been patient in their narrative and their rhetoric, and now there's a gap. There's an opening. There's a gap strategically between alliances and bases and capability and naval assets. there's a threat in that gap. Because here's what we also have to consider. I don't know if you saw this earlier in terms of we know a couple weeks ago that the Ohio-class nuclear ballistic missile submarine, the USS Alaska, made an appearance, emerged in Gibraltar. That was a signal to Iran. You know what's on the USS Alaska? The USS Alaska has on it at all times, as the C variant of the nuclear triad, at all times the USS Alaska carries 20 Trident D5 nuclear ballistic missiles. Always. So when that thing emerged and just bloop, here I am, did it then go away? No. US Central Command has announced that it's in the Mediterranean. So if you're Iran and you're looking at that and you're thinking the US want to bring in this Dark Eagle, where they're going to fire it from, I don't know. But they also have the USS Alaska sitting in the Mediterranean. And there's another nuclear submarine, an Ohio-class nuclear submarine, sitting just outside of the Gulf of Oman in the Arabian Sea. And you have the U.S. Navy Central with its 5th Fleet. When you see a gap, now's the time to exploit. Like I said, this is the 7th round. What are we going to see in the 8th round and the 9th round? Well, I think in the 8th and 9th round, we're going to see the U.S. stumble a little bit. We're going to see the U.S. take a couple jabs. But you know what Iran hasn't even done yet that they could? They can activate Ansar Allah and shut down Bab al-Mandeb. Now we're talking pain.
2 days ago, yeah.
Yeah. So now what we're seeing in the 7th round is the Rocky IV comeback.
They're still ongoing in Kuwait and Bahrain. As we speak, there's more alerts.
It's gonna keep going.
That is so different to the last few days. This is the most extensive attack by Iran since the ceasefire. This is more extensive than the strikes on the UAE during Project Freedom. They struck Fujairah once there. There's ongoing attacks that are ongoing and multiple impacts.
We have basically where we are now. And again, I'm not going to say we're back to epic fury, because we're not. What we are in is Operation Sledgehammer. This is Operation Sledgehammer. This is the resumption of the war. There is no ceasefire. That's done. Negotiations are suspended. We are at war. We all know that the United States and Israel and or U.S. capability in the region being used by either Kuwait or Bahrain are going to respond. The U.S. Navy Central Command, or the U.S. Navy Central 5th Fleet and U.S. Central Command are going to respond to this. There are going to be U.S. service members that come from this once the smoke is cleared that are either dead or wounded in Bahrain and Kuwait. That's going to happen. There's going to be a response. There's going to be a retaliation. And that retaliation is going to incite another retaliation. And this is going to escalate until either the point the bell rings and we go into the 8th and 9th round and it looks uglier, or Donald Trump says, okay, hey, and here's the strategic maneuvering of Iran saying we suspend the talks. Because now, who has to ask to restart them? Trump.
I can't believe this is
it's a well-played hand.
Yeah. They're saying, by the way, Trump is saying the negotiations are ongoing. Iranians are saying the negotiations are currently on pause.
Well, Iran said the negotiations are suspended. And I think by their actions that we're seeing right now that is true. If Donald Trump thinks that there's negotiations going on, I don't know who he's talking to.
There's reports of fighter jets, Israeli jets over Beirut.
Wow.
I don't think they'll bomb Beirut, but just reports now.
I think they will.
No, I don't think so, man. Unless maybe they could now, because the retaliation, the Americans, instead of responding directly to these attacks, they do it through allowing Israel to strike Beirut. But that's how the escalation trap looks like.
According to Israel Katz, they're going to go forward with their plans in Lebanon, regardless of what the United States says. So is Beirut going to be bombed? Yes. Is Iran going to respond and hit northern Israel like they've said? Yes. Is this going to escalate in the region? Yes. Will the United States likely use the Dark Eagle as the step just below a low-yield tactical nuke, which is essentially what a Trident II is? Yes.
Say that last one.
So what I say, the Dark Eagle hypersonic is pretty much the step below what you would then go to, hey, we're all out of options. We've used everything. The only thing we could possibly do is use a nuke. Well, your Trident II D5 nuclear missile or nuclear hypersonic missile, ballistic and hypersonic, because it leaves the atmosphere and comes back in at hypersonic speed, that is a low yield tactical nuke.
That's a drone over Bahrain. So much for air defense.
Yeah, the air defenses in Bahrain are I wouldn't even say degraded. I would say severely degraded. You know, in battle damage they're hit in what we call BDA, or battle damage assessment. You have degraded, extremely degraded, and then you have non-mission capable. Non-mission capable is that thing's done. So I would say right now that the air defense capability that Fifth Fleet can bring to bear in Bahrain is at the extremely degraded, broaching on non-mission capable.
Oh, then what the hell is the US playing with fire? Why strike Kashim Island? What's the logic
Ignorance, arrogance, thinking that you know, the having to show something. And again, if you're going to lash out, and essentially what the United States is doing at a strategic level is sacrificing Bahrain. I mean, it's like you egg someone's house and you run and then blame the neighbor. That's what we're doing. We're putting Bahrain in the crossfire. We're putting because they're close, and the U.S.
Sirens at the Fifth Fleet right now in Bahrain. How big is that base? The one in Manama.
It's not very large, because it is not like where the entire fleet is ported. It is where the headquarters of the U.S. Navy Fifth Fleet, which the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet has the mission geographically as U.S. Navy Central. So under U.S. Central Command, which is a geographic combatant command, you have U.S. Navy Central, which is the Fifth Fleet, U.S. Army Central, which is the theater army staged in Arif Jan, U.S. Marine Central, which various Marine Expeditionary units belong to. The 31st MEU was brought out of Pacific Fleet, not organic to Central Command. And then you have U.S. Air Forces Central, and then you have Special Operations Command Central, or SOC-CENT. SOC-CENT is at Camp MacDill Air Force Base. Central Command is at MacDill Air Force Base. Army Central is at MacDill Air Force Base. U.S. Special Operations Command is at MacDill Air Force Base. And they have forward commands in Qatar, Bahrain, that's where Navy is. SOC-CENT Forward, which is also in Qatar. And yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Israeli fighter jets reportedly spotted over Beirut flying northeast. What would they, if they're striking North Lebanon? There's no way they're flying towards Iran.
No, I don't think they're flying towards Iran, and I don't think that this first run of F-35s over Beirut was necessarily a strike run. I think it was a signaling. I think it was an escalatory run, probably a reconnaissance run,
a warning,
probably determining
fighter jets as a reconnaissance run.
Well, are they F-35Is, or are they, what are they? Does it say?
No, because they don't know. There's just reports of people seeing it from Beirut, so I can't tell. There's another report here. I don't know what that means. This is unconfirmed, etc. But I'm just going to read it to get your thoughts. It just came in now from one of those OSINT Telegram groups. The UAE has launched IAS unconfirmed. And by the way, before I read this, there's ongoing attacks for the last hours all day of Erbil in northern Iraq, just to be clear.
Yes.
Erbil is getting pummeled.
Oh, yeah.
It has been getting pummeled throughout the entire ceasefire.
Erbil is a massive U.S. location. The airfield, the airbase, Joint Special Operations is there. It's an important location in Iraq.
But I think they're striking the bases, the
Iranian paramilitary bases.
The Kurdish, yeah, exactly. The Kurdish forces there that were meant to be part of a regime change operations. By the way, the Israelis said that it's the Turks that didn't allow the Americans, Trump, to use the Kurds to be able to conduct an operation that was meant. You know how the Kurds were meant to rise up against the Iranian government in the early days of the war, and apparently the Turks
Yeah.
prevented that from happening, according to Israeli former Mossad, former chief of Mossad. So,
well, if there's any strikes that are hitting Erbil, they're also hitting the airfield, because that is where the Kurdish forces of the north is headquartered, is in just outside of Erbil near the airbase, which is also where the U.S. forces are based. And U.S. contractors in Erbil also stay in the hotels in Erbil city. Again, I've been there many a time. So, yeah, those strikes could definitely also be impacting U.S. forces for sure.
Low-level explosions over Kuwait looks like another failed. What is it? Looks like another failed interceptor. Alerts in Saudi.
Yeah,
Now that's a surprise. That's a surprise. Saudi's a surprise. I'm preparing my phone to get an alert. Here you go. Let me prepare it here.
Well, here's the thing. It is a surprise, but then we look at, okay, it's happening. So then why? Well, could this be a way to degrade or to distract Saudi so that the Ansar Allah and the Houthis could be activated to do something? And, you know, because we still have U.S. naval forces in the Red Sea and near Bab al-Mandeb Strait.
Air defenses are active in Saudi.
Yeah, I think Kuwait, Saudi, Qatar, where U.S. Central Command Forward is headquartered, Bahrain with U.S. Navy Fifth Fleet, they're all
initial reports of an Iranian strike on a vessel in the Strait of Hormuz. What the hell is going on, man? What the hell is going on? Where is this all coming from? Repeated explosions reported in Erbil, Iraq. The Kurdish opposition is reportedly under attack by Iranian Air Force.
Yeah, if you were to take a satellite view,
I don't know if it's the Air Force is there. I don't know if the Iranian Air Force is there, just to be clear. Maybe it's just missiles. I'll be surprised if the Air Force is there. It's mainly more drones and missiles.
The Iranian Air Force flying over Erbil? No, I would highly, no.
Yeah.
It's missiles and drones.
Exactly. Oh, they deleted that one. There you go. So they deleted the one about the Air Force, as expected. Two explosions on Kashmir Island.
The Iranian Air Force does control a portion of their drone technology, but in terms of like fighters flying over, no, it's drones and missiles.
Reports of a ship being attacked at the Strait of Hormuz off the coast of the UAE. The thing about the UAE I wanted to ask you about a couple of minutes ago, Israeli jets over Jounieh, Kasserwan, and Mount Lebanon. Man, what the hell? It's insane how things could escalate so quickly.
Well, as you recall, Mario, when we talked last, one of the things that I had talked about was that when you have something that is so tenuous and friction and tight and these tectonic plates, and when those tectonic plates slip, it's not small. This is what we're seeing now. The tectonic plate has slipped, and it's yes. The problem with something this perilous and escalatory, the potential energy in something that just sits, is that when that potential energy is released into kinetic energy, boom, we're seeing Israel's going to push it into northern Lebanon. They're going to strike Beirut. Iran is responding. The United States is responding, hitting Qasem Island. I think everything that we've predicted in terms of what may happen is now coming to the surface to where it looks like it's going to happen.
Oh, now they're saying Air Force has conducted airstrike on Kurdish opposition forces. So the Air Force are getting more reports on it now. Unconfirmed, but they're saying the Air Force that was supposed to be destroyed, they're flying fighter jets there, but they'd be shot down pretty quickly. It'd be weird. New US airstrikes.
I think it's probably unmanned.
There we go.
Systems.
Alarms and explosions rock Dubai. The entire Gulf is getting fucking attacked, man. Wow.
Yeah. I think the only one safe is probably Oman, and because they've kissed the ring.
Qatar, yeah,
and made, they have. I mean, they have. They kissed the ring, and I think they're safe. I think UAE has done some backdoor stuff that may save them a little bit, but depends on how tenuous that agreement is. If UAE dares to provoke, they're going to get it.
Sorry, just trying to get more updates. The thing I wanted to read about the drone thing, a bit irrelevant now. Reports of a ship struck off the UAE coast. That's what I just read earlier. UAE launched ISR drones per radio telemetry. Does that mean anything to you? I don't know what ISR drones are.
Yeah, so your ISR drones. So ISR is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. So, like on the U.S. side, your MQ-9 Reaper, your MQ-9 4C Predator, your MQ-10 Triton, those are all kinetic. They can fire missiles, they can attack, but their main function is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And that's what that is. They're using them to conduct intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance with the potential to strike. And really, the one-way drone or the suicide kamikaze drone that we see with the Sahid and the others is that those are also reconnaissance in a way, because as it's flying toward its target, you can monitor and observe it. So up until the point where it hits, you can see everything around it. So that is also a form of reconnaissance, of visual reconnaissance. So yeah, we're going to see a lot of reconnaissance activity from the United States, from Israel, from whoever has it. There's going to be a lot of ISR going up, because in order to fight the fight, you got to see the fight, and you can't always see it at ground level. You got to get that ISR. In fact, on every military operation I've ever been on, one of the first things you do before you go in is, and you'll hear it said often, is get the ISR up, whether that's a Predator, whether that's in special operations, we had our own. We could, put it right practically out of our pocket and put a drone above us. So, yeah, a lot of ISR is going to be flying around, and we know that Iran can interdict and take down the Reaper, the Predator, and the Triton.
No, they've took down so many of them. A lot of commercial planes flying around, waiting for permission to land over the UAE.
Oh wow!
But that's obviously, I'm guessing that's expected during an attack.
Oh sure, yeah, I would hope so. I mean, can you imagine coming in to land in your commercial aircraft, and as you're putting your tray table up, there's a hypersonic missile cruising by your window?
That escalated quickly.
Yes,
Anthony.
Yes, and I am by no means shocked or surprised. I'm kind of like, oh, that's happening now, but to the extent of which I'm not surprised, because this is the organic escalation of the situation.
Bahrain has completely closed its airspace. Completely. Is that expected?
Iran has closed its airspace?
No. Bahrain.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. Bahrain, the UAE will probably see. I'm surprised Kuwait hasn't yet. Does it show on your sources if Kuwait has released a NOTAM? And a NOTAM is a notice to airmen, meaning grounding of aircraft?
Not that I have, no.
I'm surprised Kuwait hasn't. Well. Because Camp Arif John is very, very close to Kuwait City, where Kuwait International is. And Ali Al Salim's a little further away, but it's not far. I'm surprised Kuwait hasn't shut down their airspace. Bahrain, definitely. Bahrain is obviously not that big, and they're gonna take a lot of heat. I mean, if Iran can take out the headquarters of the U.S. Central Command, or excuse me, U.S. Navy Central Command, that would be huge.
They've closed it for 12 hours.
Bahrain,
yeah. Why so long?
Because they're expecting
airstrikes on Qashm Island. Qashm Island is still being struck.
Wow.
Okay, so additional strikes reported in Kuwait. What's this? I'll just read for confirmation for this. Yeah, I'll wait for confirmation before reading this one out. Additional strikes reported in Kuwait. And there's a missile launch towards Bahrain. Fighter jets are active over Tehran. Alert in Bahrain. This is like wartime. This is literally like wartime right now. All the others that happened since the ceasefire were relatively limited. The biggest one was the constant ones against the UAE, but there was no retaliation. Now we have multiple alerts of Bahrain again. Now there's multiple.
Yeah, this is war. This is war. The war. I would consider even those kinetic incursions during the ceasefire would be acts of war, but it didn't explode. This is war. But I think once we saw that Iran was going to suspend negotiations, that this is what we were going back to.
What would you need to see next to determine this is a full-blown war?
Well, the response or the retaliatory strikes happening on Qasem Island right now, are those by the U.S. Central Command?
We don't know.
They likely are. I think what we're going to see in the next hours forthcoming is if we see activity in the Red Sea at Bab al-Mandeb, as little as even minor activity by Ansar Allah, or we see any U.S. naval incursions further north to penetrate the Strait of Hormuz, this is gangbusters. This is on. There's going to be amphibious assault. This is going to be a full court press.
So I've got some updates here. Full flight operations suspended in Bahrain, Kuwait, and the UAE as Arab media reports airport shuts down because of the attacks. Bahrain's only is closed its airspace, but full flight operations suspended in Bahrain, Kuwait, and the UAE. There's also reports that the UAE have closed their airspace, according to reports now. So just to be clear, everything I'm saying so far is unconfirmed. The Bahrain one's confirmed. The UAE haven't seen a formal document, but I've seen it mentioned in two sources. The UAE itself, as far as I understand, hasn't been attacked. It's only been the ship on the coast. And on Saudi, we don't have confirmation of the attacks. We had reports of sirens going off at Saudi, but these are unconfirmed. So the only ones confirmed so far are the Kuwait and Bahrain. The one that is likely is a ship off the coast of the UAE. And the ones that are possible, but I wouldn't say likely yet, are Saudi and the UAE. But that hasn't been anything confirmed on that front, like Kuwait and Bahrain.
Yeah, so I think that with the UAE, that their suspension of flight operations, I think, is a signaling protective measure to signal to Iran that, hey, we're not flying anything out. It's not coming from us. But by the UAE suspending all aerial operations, anything that flies through UAE airspace will then easily identifiable, because how Israel and the United States has done in the past is that when there is commercial traffic, you can fly your little drone or your airplane through there and switch off your beacon, and it just kind of blends in with the rest. Well, if the UAE has said we're suspending all air operations and there's nothing flying coming in and out of us, it's not us. Well, then anything that comes across there is going to be obviously Israel or the United States. So I think that's a protective signaling message to Iran by the UAE, saying like, hey, we're not doing anything. I think Oman is safe. I don't think Saudi is safe, but I don't think Iran has brought it to that level yet. But yeah, I would not say that they're safe.
Surprising to me. Saudi will be surprising to me. Because the Saudis, according to multiple reports, they're one of the ones that they've been trying to de-escalate the situation and trying to get an end to the war. But it's really hard. Well, it's hard to realize which. Okay, go ahead, because it's hard to know which reports are true or not. And there were initial reports that the Saudis played a key role in the war starting in the first place. So it's really hard to determine. But because there was apparently a split now where the UAE is upset at Saudi because Saudi trying to de-escalate, while the UAE was trying to get a Gulf coalition during the war to retaliate against Iran. But also we do have reports about it was Saudi and the UAE that attacked Iran during the war, mainly the UAE, according to reports.
The reports or a narrative or even of their own stating that Saudi Arabia is seeking an end to this is like cigarette companies putting a warning on the cigarette box.
Mm.
These are dangerous, but we're still going to sell them to you. Saudi doesn't want an end to this, not on any terms that may look favorable for Iran. Saudi Arabia would have no problem with the US and Israel going full on against Iran.
Yeah, they could sustain it the most because they have the Yanbu pipeline, but no, they have the Houthi problem. Houthi can close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and mess up the Yanbu, so they don't mind it within bounds.
Well,
as long as
that's why they're
pipeline.
playing the, hey, we want this to end, like, hey, we're not, but also they're saying like, hey, but you know, but if you were to take it to Iran, like, we'd be okay with it, but we're going to say we want an end to this because we don't want Iran activating Ansar Allah and busting up our back door here, because they can.
So Irib has confirmed the IRGC Air Force fighter jets, the ones that are meant to be destroyed, conducted airstrikes on the Iranian Kurdish opposition group near Erbil. So it seems that they did strike them with their Air Force.
Wow.
Which is very
I'll tell you,
surprising.
then I mean, either we did not destroy and obliterate the Iranian Navy and Air Force,
You think?
or Iran has developed some type of new technology where they can completely rebuild an obliterated force and then use it in the current war that they're fighting. So kudos either way.
Maybe alien technology that they got from the UAP files that were released. The UFO files.
I'm going with the likelihood that Pete Hegseth lied. I'm going with that. That's my final. That's my $100 offer.
Where's Iran's Ilam or Lam?
The Iranian, the
hold on. I've got a report. It seems Israel struck Qasem Island. Not Israel. I take it back. Sorry. No. That's not Israel. These are Americans going to Ben Gurion, probably. 2 KC-46 tankers returning to Tel Aviv, presumably used in strike on Qasem Island, likely the trigger for Iran's immediate retaliation. So it's two.
Well, the KC-46 is used by Israel.
Oh.
The KC-30 and the KC-35 and the KC-35 Juliet are what the variants that the United States uses.
This is a KC-46A, and it says United States Air Force on the on the image. So could it be used
typically
for,
the KC-46s that we have that do belong to the U.S. Air Force are what we typically allow Israel to use, because we won't let them use directly our KC-35, 35 Juliet, and 30 Charlies. We won't let them. We do. I know that. So yeah, if we have them in the inventory and they are at Ben Gurion, so it could have been U.S. or Israel, but regardless of who it was flown out of Ben Gurion. That's where they're all staged. That's where I even read a report last week where Israel is saying that the staging of so many U.S. Stratotankers at Ben Gurion is impacting their commercial flights.
Yeah, you saw the videos of the amount of American aircraft in Ben Gurion.
Oh God, there's. I mean, when I flew into Israel, when I first took that job with the GHF, and we came into the tarmac to the auxiliary side because we were a commercial or a contracted military air, and we pulled it to that side, just as rows of Stratotankers and U.S. military C-130s and C-17s. When we I fell asleep on the flight, so when we landed, I thought we were back in the U.S.
Why do you think the Americans struck Qasem Island? We talked about why Iran's retaliated, which could be ongoing, because there's, again, more reports of an oil tanker that was targeted off the UAE's coast. Mm-hmm. Explosions in Iraqi Kurdistan moments ago. These Kurds, honestly, poor Kurds. How many times have they been used by the Americans?
Back and forth.
With why do you think the Americans struck Qasem Island? What do you think is the strategy there?
I predict and I think that we're going into a new escalatory phase, and that the United States, because the United States also hit Qasem Island yesterday, and so if they're doing it again, this to me, because they're focusing retaliatory strikes or counterstrikes on Qasem Island, this is that preparatory phase of what may be an amphibious assault on the Lesser and Greater Tanab, or starts with an L. The island that's just off of Qashem.
Al-Musa? No.
Well, there's Hormuz Island, and then there's the
No, the Bus. Oh, okay. I know which
I
one
forgot
you're
the
talking
name
about.
of it, but basically you have Qashem Island, and then you have the Greater and Lesser Tanab just inside the corridor of the strait, and then you have Hormuz Island, and then there's another island right there. So I think that preparatory strikes against Qashem Island to degrade Larak Island, thank you, to degrade the capability or the forces on Qashem Island would be for a potential amphibious assault onto those, or a special operations operation, not long term.
Let me read out. Let me give you. I've got more context for you. Maybe that helps. So CENTCOM put out a statement, helps you analyze it better. U.S. Central Command says American forces intercepted multiple Iranian ballistic missiles and drones and carried out self-defense strikes on military ground control station on Qashem Island after attempted Iranian attacks across the Middle East. CENTCOM said 2 Iranian missiles fired towards Kuwait failed before impact, while 3 missiles launched at Bahrain were intercepted by U.S. and Bahraini air defenses. U.S. forces also shut down 3 one-way attack drones launched towards civilian shipping. No U.S. personnel were injured. Doesn't say much, so I apologize. I thought we'll give you some useful context. These are missiles being fired from Iran by the looks of it. No, these are the air defense missiles being fired, I guess. One of the Gulf countries. I think this one's like the Kuwait one. Yeah, exactly. That's Kuwait. When someone has an accident, look, they were watching the missiles. They have an accident.
I've been on, that's earlier. The highway to Ali Al Salim. I've been on that highway. So whatever's being interdicted there is right outside of Ali Al Salim.
So they're saying it was the U.S. acted in self-defense because Iran was preparing attacks across the Middle East. So I'll go back to your analysis that I interrupted, but now that you got some more context, that doesn't help. What do you make of it?
Well, the context you provided is a little bit helpful to understand where they're striking on the Qashem Island. And if you look at that, we know that Iran does have capability, not a lot, but does have some in terms of interdiction radar and some of its ability to then communicate back to its anti-ship coastal missile systems on Qashem Island. So attacks on Qashem Island can be twofold. They could, both can be true, that the United States is hitting things to attempt to blind or degrade the ability for Iran to strike with anti-ship coastal systems in the strait in preparation for some type of amphibious movement or naval movement through the strait, or it could just be that where the United States is striking, and the most pragmatic place to strike right now to not over-escalate but to show response is on Qashem Island, because you can degrade a military capability. You can somewhat minimize civilian casualties as to not spark further escalation. So it's kind of like a safe place to strike, but it could also be intentional to degrade Iran's ability to military control the strait, to which then you can send forces from U.S. CENTCOM through, or an amphibious assault. We do still have the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit afloat sitting there in the Gulf, as well as the 5th Marine Amphibious Readiness Group, the 5th ARG,
but that's
and the USS Tripoli.
But Colonel, how is that an option? We're getting reports that Iran rebuilt most of their manufacturing base, military-industrial complex. They have 90% of their missile facilities were rebuilt, were made operable again, removing the rubble from the entrances. They've about 70 to 80% of their missile launchers and missiles are still operable. And according to reports, China and Russia, but mainly China, has been heavily restocking their military capabilities, including man-pads and potentially HQ-9 air defense systems. Putting all this together, it doesn't seem like a ground operation seems like a good idea, Colonel, at all. As in, even for the most hawkish members of the military.
It is not a good idea, and I would not recommend it. And the only reason that I think that it's even possible is because when you look at the forces that we have in theater. For example, the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, those expeditionary Marines aren't there doing other things. All that their amphibious assault is what they do. That's their purpose. That's all they do. They're not sitting there also flying jets or maintaining aircraft or doing other things. They have one job, and they're there, and they're still there. The USS Tripoli, the Lightning carrier, and the 5th Amphibious Readiness Group, that's what they do, and they're there. So, yeah, I would not recommend that. I'm not saying that I think it's a good idea. It's a horrible idea. But when I look at, like, if someone is saying, hey, I weigh 600 pounds and I'm going to bake a cake, I'd be like, you shouldn't be baking a cake. But if I see flour and sugar and eggs in a bowl, I'm like, this motherfucker's going to make a cake. So right now, when I look at what's happening in terms of all the forces we have, what we're doing specifically against Keshem Island, if I were to do an amphibious assault, it would likely be at or around Keshem Island. We're seeing more strikes at Keshem Island. We haven't seen a lot of that in terms of striking Keshem Island. And now we're seeing it 2 days in a row and continuous. So what does that portend? I don't think it's a good idea, but it certainly looks like it might be happening.
Maybe, do you think maybe the Americans are in this case saying the truth? Maybe this was a defensive action because of Iranian attacks planned. Iran threatened to strike Israel. I'm not saying this is the case, because so far Iran has been the one retaliating, not striking first, and they don't want to be seen as the aggressor. Fighter jets over southern Iraq's Basra city.
But to strike Keshem Island in defense for
doesn't make sense.
What?
Exactly. That's what all the oil
they're not
are.
firing their ballistics or their intercontinental ballistics or the things that are hitting Kuwait and everything aren't coming from Keshem Island.
Yeah.
So to respond in defense, okay, I'd buy that, sure. But to respond in defense against an area that isn't in defense of the current activity of which you are being attacked, but you see it as an opportunity to open up another avenue of attack through maybe naval forces through the strait, sure. Yeah, defensive retaliation, sure, that makes complete sense. Defensive retaliation and targeting Keshem Island? Well,
yeah. So what happens?
I would see defensive retaliation strikes going toward where the strikes are coming from.
So what do you think Trump will do tomorrow? Scramble and say, oh, that was nothing like he did after Project Freedom? Because after Project Freedom, we saw strikes, but we saw Trump immediately walking back. And also, do you think it's the Americans or the Israelis that did this? I think it's the Americans. We have fighter jets over southern Iraq's Basra city right now. Unconfirmed reports, but I'm assuming that will be American fighter jets.
I think this is the U.S. I think that Israel is keeping its powder dry and its forces ready for incursion and further into Lebanon and to respond to what Iran might retaliate with once they start hitting Beirut.
Do you think they will strike Beirut?
I do.
Why?
Because they said they would.
Yeah, but they say many things.
Usually when Israel says they're going to strike,
change.
Well, we said that. I don't think Israel ever thought or cared about regime change. I think what Israel wants is regime gone. Is Iran gone? And so the main narrative of and again, what we heard by the United States, it was regime change. It was nuclear weapons. It was their Navy. It was their Air Force. It was their ballistic missiles. Now it's the Strait of Hormuz. That wasn't a problem before February 28th. So how's that a reason to go to war when it wasn't a thing before the war? So I think Iran is like, hey, or Israel is like, hey, US, whatever reason you want to claim for Iran, sure, fine with us. We're focused on this. But everything that Israel has said in terms of what it's going to do, like striking Iran or striking, they said, we are not going to let H group, Hamas, negotiate. And what did they do? They struck Qatar. They said, we are going to take this much more of Gaza. And what have they done? They have said, we're going to go into southern Lebanon. And this time we're going to push all the way to Litani. And they did. So now they've said to include Israel Katz, who is typically, provocative, but typically doesn't say as much as your Smotrich or your Ben Gavir. But even he came out and said, we're doing it. I think that Israel is going to strike Beirut.
And do you think Iran will retaliate by striking Israel?
Yes.
That's
because they said they would.
That's full-blown war, but that's a full-blown war.
Yes, it is. Yes.
You don't think Trump may just abandon Israel in this case? They've gone too far.
Well, so that's a question, and it is a good question, but it is also a separate question. Could Israel say, we don't care what you say, US, we're going to bomb Beirut? They said that already. So would they go at it alone? They would. Could Donald Trump say, well, then we're going to help defend you against an Iranian attack? Sure. Could the US say, not only are we going to defend you against an Iranian attack, we are also going to counterattack? Sure. Could the United States say, we're not helping you out on this one, you're on your own? Sure. All three of those are possibilities. I'm not so sure yet on what Donald Trump will do. I don't think he has the maneuver space to completely abandon Israel in an Iranian response, but I think he's also not willing to go on the offensive. So I think what it will look like is a very passive present defense against how Iran may respond, but that's about it. But I mean, we really don't have a lot to provide Israel in terms of defense. We don't have a lot to offer anymore.
The IRGC put out a statement trying to explain why they did what they did. Late last night, the invading US military targeted an Iranian oil tanker near the Strait of Hormuz with a Hellfire missile, causing damage to the engine room. Why would the US use a Hellfire missile on a tanker? Is that normal on an oil tanker?
Oh yeah, that is how the United States Central Command, with the deployment of the US Army Apache attack helicopter, which is equipped with Hellfire missiles, this has been their tactic, or their TTP, their tactic,
striking the engine,
procedure. Striking the engine room or the rudder, one of the two, depending on the type of vessel, but either striking the engine room or the rudder with a Hellfire missile, because it can. I mean, I've seen Hellfires go through a car and put a hole in the car that was only about that big. It's the explosion that matters. A Hellfire missile is not that big. You can hold it. It's not big.
Okay.
So when you see the Hellfire, that would be the weapon of choice to destroy an engine room on a maritime vessel of that size. Remember, these aren't little boats here. These are floating cities.
Yeah, I remember Malcolm Nance was explaining this to me. He's actually coming in 10 minutes. Former US Navy, not sure if you know him, but he's been in the Strait of Hormuz multiple times and talks about how, the tanker wars happened many, many years ago. It's just wild how things work.
So back many years ago, when I was a second lieutenant in the United States Army, was barely old enough to drink a beer, and I was leading an infantry platoon. I was part of an Army unit that was the 2nd Stryker Brigade in the Army. So the Stryker was the new system. There was a Stryker Brigade in country in Iraq, and our Strykers, we weren't going to replace them. We were going to be in addition to. So all of our Strykers had to get rail loaded from Alaska, because I was stationed in Fort Wainwright, Alaska, to Louisiana, ported, and then put on a ship and floated through the Strait of Hormuz to Kuwait. And because I was a second lieutenant, I was single, I was brand new to the unit, I drew the short straw and had to ride that slow ride. It took about 4 weeks. And I was on one of those vessels with military equipment, same vessel, but loaded with military equipment. And even 4 weeks on that thing, I didn't see it all. They're so big. And when we sailed through the Strait of Hormuz, you think, oh, the Strait of Hormuz, it's not, you can, as you're going through it, you can be like, well, there's Oman and there's Iran. You can see it. We're not talking about a massive ocean here. There's not a lot of room.
So the statement I read from the IRGC before seems to be not official. So this unofficial by all these Telegram groups claiming to be an IRGC statement. So That makes more sense. You know, the one where they use the Trump tone, saying stupidity, etc. So that one's
Yes.
not confirmed, and seems to be not the right one. They put out the accurate statement now that's been confirmed. Late last night, the invading U.S. military targeted an Iranian oil tanker near the Strait of Hormuz with a Hellfire missile, damaging the engine room. In response to this aggression and violation of the regulations of the Strait of Hormuz, the IRGC targeted an enemy Zionist American ship, the Panaya, with missiles. In a renewed aggression, the American enemy also targeted an IRGC communications on Qasem Island. In response to this aggression, its airbase and its helicopter base stationed in one of these countries in the region, Kuwait, as well as the headquarters of the US Fifth Fleet, Bahrain, were subjected to an attack by missiles and drones of the IRGC Airspace Force. We warned previously that in the event of aggression, the response will be different and harsher, and we have acted accordingly. These responses should serve as a lesson. We reaffirm that undermining the security of the Strait of Hormuz will cost the invading US military a heavy price. So, meanwhile, 2 Iranian missiles struck the headquarters of the Komala party in the Alana Valley, northeast of Erbil. So the Kurds are still getting attacked. That hasn't stopped. But to the statement by the Iranians, now we'll see if the Americans retaliate to this. We don't know what, or the Israelis on behalf of the Americans. But so far, based on their story, it seems one of their ships was attacked last night, and then one of their satellites was attacked in Qasem Island, and they've retaliated by striking the Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain and the 2 bases in Kuwait, which were used as part of the attack. So it seems they're targeting the countries that play a role in every attack by the Americans. And in this case, why was the UAE not attacked? They did attack an Emirati ship off the coast, but doesn't mean it's a ship, Emirati-owned ship.
Sure.
They struck an Emirati ship off the coast, but they haven't struck Emirates. They haven't, according to reports, so far the information we have, Saudi has not been struck. I haven't been able to confirm that. They've struck Kuwait and Bahrain. I don't know why they struck the Fifth Fleet headquarters, but they did strike the Kuwaiti base that was used in the operation. Maybe the Fifth Fleet headquarters was also used in the operation.
If I was sitting in the Iranian control center, I would have targeted the Fifth Fleet at Bahrain also. It's the leadership of the entire naval fleet in the Strait of in the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. I would have.
So what do you make of the information we have so far? It seems that I don't know why the US struck that ship, but see, this is how an escalation trap would look like. My conclusion would be this is the Americans operating as they always have, acting as they have the upper hand. That's been the case throughout. And we're seeing the process right now where the Iranians are trying to take that escalation dominance gradually away from the US, trying to take the upper hand, and that the American perception they could do anything and either expect limited retaliation or no retaliation. The Iranians are changing the calculus to stop these attacks by the US, because the US is conducting these attacks as a way to pressure the Iranians to concession on the negotiating table. The Iranians are like, we're not going to do this. Now, the question is, will the Americans continue that pressure, which means retaliating to this? Because last time the Gulf was attacked, they pretty much forced Trump to retaliate. He initially dismissed the attack on the UAE, then Saudi closed their airspace. There was heavy lobbying, criticizing Trump for not acting. 2 days later, the US attacked Iran. Pretty heavy attack. I'm not sure if we're going to see the same thing right now. But they did strike. The difference now is they struck American bases in the region. Last time they struck Fujairah in the UAE. So it's a civilian infrastructure in the UAE. So it's a bit different what they did last time to what they did this time. But still, it's a very significant attack with multiple waves and what seems multiple impacts, even though the Americans saying everything is intercepted.
Well, so you recall a couple of weeks ago, there were some strikes during these negotiations, and Donald Trump called it a love tap. Remember that?
Yeah.
So now I think this was another, let's give them another love tap. And Iran said after the first love tap, like, stop, because our response is not going to be kind. And Donald Trump authorized another love tap. And Iran put some spice on this response. They put some force behind that slap. So will the United States escalate from this response? Yes. And I do think that the striking of the Israeli or the Iranian vessel in the way that it was struck, not turned around, not sanctioned, not boarded and seized, but struck, is an act of aggression and a retaliation bait or an escalatory trap that I wouldn't say Iran took bait. Iran responded in kind, just as they said they would.
Yeah, but
And
why
it's
did they
perfect
why did
now.
the Americans target the telecommunications tower on South Kasham Island with
Well, so that's
aerial
the,
projectiles?
remember we talked, so that's the question. If you're trying to counter Iranian strikes, you would counter strike where they struck you from. What does Kasham Island have to do with it? The only reason you would want to take out the communications and radars in Kasham Island, because what that communicates with, remember, Iran doesn't have forces all over the region. What that radar and communication system on Kesham Island communicates with, it's part of the IRGC Navy coastal battery system along where Manab and Bandar Abbas in that cove, that coastal defense system. So if you want to strike the communication to blind the coastal defense systems of the anti-ship battery along that coast that's specifically designated for the Strait of Hormuz, why would you do that? Well, because you want to blind the coastal artillery on the Strait of Hormuz. Why would you do that? Because you want to move military forces into the Strait of Hormuz. Why would you do that? Well, if you do that, you have to follow it up with something that you actually have as tangible. What, send some boats through there and say we did it? Who cares? I foresee these actions as preemptive toward a naval operation in the Strait of Hormuz. Does that culminate with an amphibious assault? I don't know. But the fact that we have amphibious assault forces on the boats sitting in the Gulf of Oman, it could be.
Well, as a final question then, as we wrap this up, and just for the audience, we do have Malcolm Nance joining in 3 to 4 minutes to continue the conversation. To wrap this up, you're still in the position now that this war is going to go on. The war is not over. And we may even see
I am in that
operation. You're still in that
yes.
position. You're still pretty, and that hasn't shifted in any way, positive or negative, in the last few days. What happened in Israel, the call between Netanyahu and Trump, today obviously is the bad news. It's heading into the kind of that reaffirms your position that things could escalate.
No, I think that Donald Trump is pissed off at Netanyahu. I take that as at face value as true. I would be too. Do I think that Netanyahu is going to go into Lebanon further, despite of what the United States says? Yes, I think that they will. Is that going to escalate things further with Iran's response? Yes, it will. Could then be on the table the activation of Ansar Allah and the Houthis in Yemen to cause further harm to the international community and to put pressure on Trump, to put pressure on Netanyahu? Yes. All I see from here is micro escalation, or potentially, like we saw today, some macro escalation. So will it go from escalation to little escalation to some big escalation to then all out? Yeah. And I think we're on that road. I do think that Israel is going to attack Beirut. I do think that Iran will respond. I do think that the United States will have to decide, are we going to defend? Are we going to join the offensive against? Or are we going to walk away? And I do not think that Donald Trump will walk away from Israel. I think at a minimum, we're going to see a defensive posture that's going to draw the United States into the war regionally, because then if I was Iran, I would pull the lever on Bab al-Mandab. That's what I would do.
CENTCOM just put out the statement, claim Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claims they struck the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain and the U.S. air base in the region with missiles and drones today. Truth. All Iranian attacks on American forces failed. U.S. forces remain vigilant, ready to defend against unwavering Iranian aggression. But wasn't it confirmed that the Kuwaiti attack led to casualties on the American side a few days ago? The attack on the Kuwaiti base? And
yes,
Hexeth was asked about it, and he avoided the question. Do you remember? That was today, I think he was asked about it, or yesterday.
Yeah, so I think that with the strike in Kuwait that severely wounded or injured, or still casualties, you have casualties that are dead or casualties that are wounded 5 Americans, contractors and service members. I think that the Department of Defense would have tried to do everything to cover that up. What I think happened was that because one of these individuals amongst them that was injured was a civilian contractor, not replicated under the or mandated under Army protocol, and they probably put that out, and so it was out. So the Army had the DoD had to get ahead of it and say, I mean, since this war has started, have you ever seen the United States claiming casualties that quick?
No.
No.
Well, that's normal, expected from all sides in any war.
It is expected. So then why has the United States been so for the United States to express its casualty numbers? No. I mean, I remember when I was in the wars that I fought, if I had a casualty, family members and it was known within 24 hours. This withholding of information of US casualties is not normal. But what I would say, the casualty reports that we got from the strike in Kuwait came out very quicker than what we've seen in this war thus far. So what Bahrain, what Fifth Fleet or US Central Command did confirm at least is that was the Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain attacked? Yes. They didn't say they weren't attacked. They said there were no casualties. So were they attacked? Yes.
Yeah, that's been confirmed. That's been confirmed. Yeah. Anthony, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for staying with us throughout this attack.
Thank you.
And
of course, Mario. Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.
It's always great. And I appreciate the dialogue. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right, guys. We've got Malcolm Nance joining now to hopefully, as always, Malcolm, help me make sense of this. And then Malcolm's like, coming, Mario. I'll explain what's going on.
Oh, gosh.
How are you?
You know what's funny is, what did you need me for? You Colonel Aguilar, just explain everything in proper format. It's just a lot more fun when you hear it from a sailor who has actually been discussing this since about an hour and a half thus far. So let me give you my recap. You can go get a double espresso or something, because I know you're very way. What time is it? 0400 there? It should be pushing.
It's 4 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah, halas. This is the correct time for a battle. And as you might recall, a few times this week when we spoke, I said we are overdue for a major clash in the Strait of Hormuz. And what's happening thus far, what you're seeing that precipitated this fighting today, is the fact that the United States is secretly trying to carry out two events. One, they are carrying out a very low-level version of Operation Freedom. You might recall that about a month ago, Trump announced that U.S. warships would be escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz, through these lower waters of the Musandam Peninsula off of Oman, south of the original traffic separation scheme. So we knew that was going on. And then he announced, because of Saudi pressure, within a day, I believe, that they were going to stop that. That has not stopped. What they've done is that they've set up the parameters for any country that wants to try to get out without going through the Iranian multipass way up south of Larak Island, or entering the Strait of Hormuz through Hormuz Island and Qasem Island. You don't have to go that route. The U.S. Navy from time to time will have warships providing an air defense umbrella, and you can come through this southern route. And if you go across these points of navigation, you can get out, right? So we knew that this was going on. We have now had 3 naval clashes related to ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz. And what it really shows is that the Iranians have a very close watch on what's going on out there. 3 times we have had ships try to do that run. 3 times the Iranians have responded with, now I just want to point out to you, most of the Iranian response has been with Shahed drones. They are low, they are slow, they are easy to detect over water. You can go get a cup of coffee and dinner by the time that a Shahed drone goes from Qasem Island to about halfway through the Strait of Hormuz. These are demonstration attacks, right? The things that the people they're really attacking are the merchantmen that we're trying to give top cover to. So apparently tonight, a merchantman was coming through the SOH, the western approaches to the SOH. U.S. Navy warships were in the vicinity, close enough to provide air defense cover for that. Not to mention, we also fly strike fighter aircraft over the Strait of Hormuz. We've been flying A-10 Warthog strike aircraft out of Al Dhafra Air Base in UAE. We've been flying AH-64 Apache helicopters. out of the UAE to take on Iranian high-speed small boats. We've been flying MH-60 Seahawk helicopters with Hellfire missiles, and we've been running probably the MH-60. What do they call it? The Nighthawk, right? SH-60 Nighthawk, which is the helicopter dedicated to mine sweeping that drags a mine sweeping sled or a sonar that can detect mines. This has been days that we have been waiting for a bigger battle, because the Americans announced 3 days ago that in the old traffic separation scheme, there was a possibility of significant military activity, naval activity there, which is another way of saying we're going to be clearing mines. The Iranians said, if you come out there, we're going to engage you. So most likely, both things were going on. We're running, helicopters doing high-speed mapping of the western approaches to the Strait of Hormuz, and a merchant ship tried to get through, and the Iranians put a drone into it, or tried to hit it with a drone. The U.S. Navy responded, and then in response to that, using intelligence from our preeminent intelligence agency that I used to work for, the National Security Agency, they hit a microwave relay tower south of Qasem Island. And what that does is that handles direct line-to-line microwave and telephonic communications and mobile phones. May even have a radar on it. But according to the Iranians, it was a telecommunications tower. We hit that in order to neutralize command and control on guys who were probably out in the water with mobile phones, right? So that happened. But the Iranians weren't accepting that. They were like, oh, okay, you're doing this? Ali El Salam Air Base, you're getting hit again. Our Camp Arif Jan in Kuwait, southern Kuwait, we see helicopters flying out of there. You're getting hit. Bahrain, you're coordinating all of this? Not really, because I don't think U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters has been reestablished in Bahrain. I think it's aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln right now. That's U.S. Naval Forces Central Command Forward, is on an aircraft carrier. Bahrain got blitzed, right? I mean, once they got the Baskin-Robbins and the Navy exchange and the telecommunications center, that base is essentially offline. So they threw ballistic missiles at Bahrain to try to remind them just exactly how bad it could get. And then we found that Abu Dhabi at Dhafra Air Base was attacked by no less than 2 ballistic missiles, both of which were intercepted. Iran knows you're going to intercept them. Iran knows you have a very high probability of intercepting these missiles. It's just a little reminder that they can, as you like to say, Mario, horizontally escalate, right? It's not just that Robert Pape escalation trap. They can just go sideways and say, oh, you guys think we forgot about you, right? There may even have been attacks towards Saudi Arabia. So that's what's going on. A little stronger Iranian response than I expected. We'll find out in the morning what's going on with the naval response. I heard a merchantman got hit by a drone. We are still overdue a major naval clash in the Strait of Hormuz. This wasn't it. When the Americans really are going to come in there and make a big effort at minesweeping, they're going to bring in those 3 LCS combat ships, 3 to 4 Aegis-class guided missile destroyers, the 2 old-school minesweepers that are relatively effective, and they're going to do a whole night where all they do is they're going to run the traffic separation scheme and try to get mines. And that's when the Iranians are going to start putting out real hell down across the Strait of Hormuz.
What do you think is the trigger point? So the Iranians are saying their vessel got attacked, one of their ships got attacked with Hellfire missiles to hit the engine, and they said one of their satellites was struck in Qasem Island. Do you think they're saying the truth? This is the reason that triggered this?
No, first off, the merchantman that was struck was an Iranian ship that was inbound to the Strait of Hormuz, and the Americans disabled it as part of their blockade. And you see what we've been doing. We've been hitting them with Hellfire missiles, disrupting these vessels to the point where they can't navigate, they can't run an engine, they got to be towed out. That's one. But if you look at the response, they were waiting, right? They had a response table. I keep telling you, they have these response tables, right? 1A, 1B, 1C, right? And they tell them, in the event of this code word, 1A. This one, 1C. Gradual escalation Tuesday. Okay. Bahrain, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, you all are going to get 2 missiles each, right? So it's very, very, they escalate horizontally or laterally, you might want to say, but just a bit, just enough to get your attention, not enough to actually do any damage and waste what, 6, 8 Patriot missiles. So on the Iranian side, the phrase is, do we have your attention now? Okay. It's not 568 missiles like the Emirates got before, but it could be next time if you keep playing these games with the Americans. And I find it not fascinating, but I find it rather rational that the Iranians go after bases and then say, you are flying U.S. aircraft out of there. Stop doing that, and we will stop paying attention to you with missiles.
The Keshem Island satellite.
Oops. Yeah,
What do you think?
that's.
What's that?
I don't really think it's a satellite. I think it's a telephone microwave relay system, microwave and mobile phones. It's command and control. If there were any satellite data, it might even have been a dome, geodesic dome that we have there, that they have there, that could have been providing satellite uplink and downlink for internet, right? Could be high-speed broadband internet. But whatever it was, we viewed it as a communications node that did not rank in importance before for us to hit them. Now it ranks in importance. We are attacking them because we think.
What is it? What was attacked exactly, you think? Can you explain it?
The Iranians said that it was a telecommunications tower.
Yeah.
Which is a lattice.
Which is odd. Why would they strike that in Keshem? That's a bit unusual.
Well, when you have a telecommunications tower. Wait, stop. Full disclosure, I will not reveal any of my cool ass NSA stuff here, right? I'm only going to tell you what you could learn off of watching a TV commercial. Because that's what I did as cryptologist for NSA. And this is our little thing, which tells, if we struck that tower, we either, one, knew that it had a command and control function we need to disable. Most of the time, it is based on real hard known intelligence from the NSA, because that's what they do. And they say, hey, Tower 1162 on the northeast tip of Keshem Island, are not using regular telephones. They have a mobile phone repeater on that. Let's make that go away, shall we? And what you do is you put a bomb down that tower collapses, loses power. Now the mobile phones of these high-speed boats, they have to come very close inshore. Or they could have had whip antennas on it, right? Might have been, I haven't seen this tower, I don't know anything about it, but I know how to kill them. Might have had a 100-foot VHF, UHF aerial on it. Or it might have had some other form of command and control. It might have had internet relay. And it was providing command and control in that area of Keshem Island to the point where we needed to degrade their command and control. The fact that we hit one means that we developed this target. Means that we knew it was there. This tower was there prior to our previous strikes. This tower didn't have any viable intelligence for us. And now it's like, oh, that we blew up all the other towers. This one is now providing command and control. Let's neutralize that. See if they can use wigwag flags or visual lights or something like that. Most likely, it had to do with radios, VHF radios, and cell phones.
So the whole intention of this is what? To establish dominance in the Strait of Hormuz, kind of looking at it big picture?
No. I mean, I suspect that what it is it's the Hexathian flailing of the, we've talked about this many times. None of this has any coordination that I can find. It's all off the top of his head. This is something which I, as someone who fought in the Gulf, fought the Iranians in direct naval combat, would have used the entire history of the Iran-Iraq war, operations Ernest Wild, and all these other things that we did in the Gulf. And I would have come up with a strategy to have a shitload of mine countermeasures and strikes ready on day -5 before we invaded, before we attacked Iran. And then you go, okay, it's D-Day, H hour. Let's get all those things positioned off Khor and get them positioned off Musandam and get ready, because when those small boats come out, we need to sink all those small boats. I've mentioned this on your show several times. The United States has no record of sinking any high-speed, fast inshore attack craft in the first 2 months of the war at sea. They sank them in port. They sank the Iranian Navy in port, but that's not their asymmetric strength. Their asymmetric strength was the IRGC's estimated 33,000 high-speed small craft, right? It doesn't have to be that many. We saw them come out 2 weeks ago, 150 at a time, right? These are the kind of high-speed boat swarm, what we call bog hammer swarms, that everybody was looking out for. But prior to this war, I don't know what the U.S. Navy is doing. I guess they were out bombing everything in central Iran. They were not bombing IRGC missile bases around the Strait of Hormuz. They were definitely not bombing the mine warfare centers. They destroyed 2 boats at the pier that supposedly were loading mines. But the mines that they're looking for are, generally round. Most mines aren't like that now. They're triangular in shape. And they are bottom influence mines, or they're torpedoes. They're mines that can be shot from rockets. There's a shitload of things they can put out there. And then you have anti-ship missiles, cruise missiles. You have drones, Shahid drones, anti-ship ballistic missiles. The Iranians haven't even used their entire pantheon of things they could kick our ass with, the way the Houthis tried, right? So I think that since the U.S. Navy didn't put a lot of emphasis on this during the active ground war, it's like they're playing catch up now, right? Like, we need to get those minesweepers out there. No, you should needed to have had those minesweepers out there on day 1 of the war, and you should have been trying to maintain dominance of the Strait of Hormuz with whatever warships you have. No, they didn't do that.
I remember
Those
you
were on
explained.
day
You explained
90.
one of the mine. You remember you explained some of the minesweepers were in the U.S. being decommissioned before the war, just
Yeah.
months before the war. Remember?
Well, we did bring 2 of those class, the Avenger class. There were only 4 of those remaining in the U.S. Navy inventory. They were all in Sasebo, Japan. We managed to order 2 of those to the Strait of Hormuz just in the last 2 months. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And the LCS combat ships, these littoral combat ships that have this mine countermeasures module on them, they are not dedicated. These are ships made out of aluminum. They are highly vulnerable to enemy fire. They have virtually no great defenses. And they're cute little ships, right? But this is not the same as a multi-ship dedicated mine warfare suite. And Donald Trump has been convinced by the Secretary of the Navy and all the rest of these guys that a capability we have never tested in combat is going to do the job. Well, should have been doing this job for months now. We're just getting around to it. What, day 97?
Why do they keep striking the Kurds in Erbil? Throughout this entire operation now, they're striking the Kurds, and they strike them all the time. They sent their Air Force there. They had fighter jets, Iranian fighter jets striking the Kurds. And now there's a restricted, that was earlier, according to multiple sources, the jets were there. And now, just a few minutes ago, a restricted airspace zone has been established within 13 nautical mile radius of Erbil, up to an altitude of 6,000 feet due to military exercise. The restriction is in effect today from 7 to 10 UTC. That comes in after all the strikes. Not sure if that's the Americans preparing to retaliate or defend the Kurds. But yeah, the Kurds are getting pummeled throughout the entire ceasefire.
Wow. Well, I knew that the Americans were attacking Hashid up there, but if the Iranians are going to Erbil and Sulaymaniyah is where they really should be attacking. I mean, Sulaymaniyah is right there on the Iranian-Kurdish border. You can look at the border posts.
Hashid Shabi?
Yeah, the Popular Mobilization Front forces that are pro-Iranian militias made up of Shia Iraqis. These are the guys who fired the drones at the Baraka nuclear power plant.
But they're not. Would they be around Erbil?
Yes. Well, I mean, they could be in the vicinity of Erbil. This is a funny thing about Kurdistan. If you haven't been up to Kurdistan, really close, they have a whole border, wall that they have between Kirkuk and Erbil. So if you see a bomb explosion 5 kilometers off, it could be in Iraq, right? These are guys who could be moving there. Or you could have seen border troops cross the border on the frontier. It's all mountainous up there out to the east. Suleimania, it's a beautiful country. But you have the Hessian Shabi could be bombarding U.S. forces up at the at the airport, very nice airport up in Ainkawa. And, the United States could be carrying out retaliatory strikes against Iranian police, Iranian IRGC militia that are just over the border from Suleimania. I mean, you can see the border. So you would see their explosions too. But this is a good place to trade fire because the Iraqi Kurds, this is weird. Well, I'm going to give you this one, Mario. If the Iraqi Kurds have really worked to stay out of this war, they don't want to support the Iranian Kurds. Okay? Don't forget, Trump said that he gave them a bunch of weapons and they stole them.
Okay. Yeah, the former chief of Mossad said that Turkey is the reason that Trump did not go ahead and launch this operation. That's what he claimed. Turkey was standing in the way. And there's a report as well.
I was going to say the Turks hate the Kurds. 1/3 of Turkey, all of Eastern Turkey is Kurdish. And there is no one do they hate more than the Kurds. And they don't want to see any of these groups gain military strength so that they can create a Kurdish homeland. So the Turks will actually work with the Iranians to screw the Iranian Kurds if they seem to have gained any traction, weapons, or power from the United States. That's the kind of bedfellows you have up there.
So I have a question on the PMF in Iraq, but before going there, because it gets too granular, I want to go back to the events that just happened now. That literally happened 2 days. It was yesterday was it yesterday or the day before that happened, the whole Beirut thing, striking Beirut, about to be struck, an evacuation order. Was that yesterday?
Yes,
it was yesterday. Wild. So yesterday we had Beirut almost struck, Iran threatening to strike Israel. Today we have the biggest attack against the Gulf since the ceasefire. Just to be clear, this is the most extensive attack since the ceasefire. And there's, according to, just so see that U.S. officials saying the ceasefire stands. So relatively quickly, I expect Trump to do the same thing tomorrow. Oh yeah, ceasefire stands similar to Project Freedom. I know. Are you still in my boat that you think the war's over, or are you starting to doubt it more, that things could break out of control again?
I think what we have I still stand by my analysis, which has been relatively solid thus far. The only way that this war is going to go back to being a war is if the Israelis decide that it is in their interest to screw Trump and to do a major attack against Iran. Right now, their focus is on Hezbollah, which is their proxy. For one time, I actually believe Axios when they say that Trump really got upset with Netanyahu, because Trump, for a while there, people have been saying he was being led around by a nose ring by Netanyahu. Trump cannot stand being second fiddle to anybody. His narcissism is outrageous. He just won't allow it. And it had pretty much taken traction across all boards that Israel was leading us. Trump does not like that. And then don't forget, we just did this negotiated quieting down of fire with the Lebanese government in Washington, in the White House, the Israelis and the Lebanese. And now Netanyahu's going rogue and essentially saying, hey, we're about to Gazify all of southern Lebanon. Way too many people are coming into Trump going, hey, Netanyahu's screwing you on this point. You need to rein him in. So that whole thing about Trump going, I kept you out of prison, what do you think you're doing? That is classic Trump. Everybody I know that knows Donald Trump personally, right? I used to do a podcast with 2 guys who went to prison for him. They said he does that. He thinks he owns you. He crafted you. Don't forget, Trump also said he was so popular he could be prime minister of Israel and beat Netanyahu. I think that's in his head, that he's the most popular person in the world and no one should be defying him, even Netanyahu. So he wants this peace deal with the Iranians. He desperately needs it. So If Israel jumps in on Iran, this could all go out the window.
Have you seen the footage of the strikes today? Did it seem that there was impact or no?
In which country?
Kuwait. It seems both, but the ones I heard where there sounded like explosions of impact, where he boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
It sounded like impact.
The
Or it's
only
hard to
ones that I
tell.
saw in Kuwait that looked like an impact was one of the Patriot missiles went stupid and it blew
Okay,
up
that's what I
in
saw.
a neighborhood. You can see it, all the white phosphorus. I see
There it
that
is. Yeah,
many.
there it is. This
Yeah,
is
I've
it
seen
here.
that many times before.
There it is here, and boom.
Boom. Yeah. Yikes. Okay. Not positive, but I've seen that before. I've seen it in Saudi Arabia. You know, missiles go dumb. They just don't track. They come out of the tube, they flop, flip, flop, and they blow up in your immediate neighborhood of your missile.
But do you think
I've
the
only saw
Americans are saying,
intercepts.
okay, so you
I
don't
haven't
think there
seen
was
an
impact?
impact.
Because that
No.
would have been very surprising if there was, because it wasn't a massive attack. It was a few waves, but
Nah.
not talking about 10, 15 missiles.
Nah, maybe 2 each wave. Just, just to remind you that this could get a lot worse, right?
And
They didn't even
they
launch
struck a
massive
vessel.
drones.
Did you know they
Mhm.
struck a vessel off the Dubai coast as well? You saw that as well? Or no?
Yes. Yeah, I
Okay.
saw that. His name was Penaya or something like that.
Penaya. Yeah, it was
That thing was hit by a drone.
okay.
But going after merchant ships with drones, I mean, that's pretty easy. They could have hit 100 ships in Dubai's harbor. So again, this lateral, or as you guys call it, horizontal tippy toe escalation is just to keep your focus on what you should be doing.
Are they trying to establish escalation dominance? Because the attack, similar to Operation Freedom and similar to the warning against Israel when it came to Lebanon, they seem to be retaliating more aggressively than they used to before. We're not seeing that tit for tat. Is that them strategically trying? And in their statement, I think they said, no, they didn't. That's a false statement. It seems they're trying to establish escalation dominance, or not necessarily from this response.
They don't have to. The Iranians are winning. Okay, let's just be honest. If this was a real intelligence assessment, and you were to ask me, as a senior intelligence collector analyst, I would say, I'm sorry, but the enemy has strategic advantage here. They have all the cards right now. I always say this on your show, we have hit them with everything in the American inventory, except 8 Black Eagle hypersonic missiles. And what are they going to do against the mountain? Hit it, blow up, take a pretty picture. That's it. We have used everything in the U.S. military inventory shy of atomic weapons. There's nothing we can do here that will harm these people or break their will to fight. I mean, if we could firebomb Dresden and kill 100,000 people in a night and they still fight against us, believe me, the Iranians are just going to, as I like to say, they're going to have another cup of tea and exercise strategic patience, because every day that Trump holds out is a day towards the end of global economy. And
Why do you think
US
they
$10 a
suspended?
gallon gas.
Why do you think they suspended talks? Because the talks are still suspended.
Doesn't bother them one bit. I mean, it doesn't. But guys, let's be honest here. It does not bother them. They managed to ring in Lebanon after 30 days of Israel just ignoring ceasefires. Now they have everyone's attention. Even Trump is having to tell Netanyahu, you got to stop this bombing. Don't bomb Dahya. Don't bomb, don't raise southern Lebanon. It just remains to be seen whether Israel will pay attention to him or not.
Katz is saying now that they'll still continue striking Dahya. You think he's talking shit?
I saw that. I think Katz is absolutely on board for doing it. Katz, Ben-Gvir, and Netanyahu, that little triumvirate.
But he said no, he wants to. He said it's still part of the plan. You think that's the
so
truth?
Netanyahu said the exact same thing. You recall we call it the tale of two tweets. When Trump put out that tweet saying, hey, I told Netanyahu not to bomb it. Israel complied. Netanyahu's not going to bomb it. Now we can get on towards peace. And Netanyahu comes right out and goes, no, nothing's changed. We're going to bomb them. If it's in Israel's interest, we're going to keep striking. Now this is where you had the Trump Netanyahu F you loser phone call, right? I kept you out of prison. That does not work on Benjamin Netanyahu, right? They are their own entity. Whether this will work for the Iranians is an entirely different matter. But I do think Iran's exercising their strategic patience. But by raising the stakes a little bit to say today, to go, oh, we're not just going to hit Kuwait. We're going to hit Bahrain. We're going to hit Qatar. Or we're going to hit Bahrain. We're going to hit Kuwait. We're going to hit United Arab Emirates. And since Qatar has been playing nice, we're going to leave you alone. So
So
it's
there's reports I
actually
just see now,
cool pool.
just quickly. Air defense have been activated in Isfahan, central Iran, unconfirmed. Just waiting for more sources. And then power outages have been reported in West Tehran and Northeast Tehran. So just seeing those reports. I'm not sure if they're even related.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's related. Air defense in Isfahan, that might be just defensive fires.
Yeah, the power outages getting more sources, by the way.
Yeah.
Explain those power outages. Are they struggling from an energy perspective?
I'm not sure if they're struggling from an energy perspective. The way that you get power outages is to knock out substations, right? Short out substations. That is part of a strike, how do you put it? Planning, sequencing of events. But it could also be that they shut down the substations so that they wouldn't short out if the Israelis bombed them, right? So they turn off power. We don't know how that power went off. All we do is know that it went off, especially in Western Iran. That's where they expect to get hit, right? They expect the Israelis or somebody else to come out and blow up those airbase substations. Or maybe we are using the precision strike missile to short out particular bases. We won't know without more intelligence.
You said something before I mentioned this news. You said that this doesn't work with Netanyahu, the call that Trump had with him. And funny, it just reminds me of something I was reading about yesterday, is how there's been similar reports about Biden and Netanyahu, not as extreme as the one with Trump. There are similar reports about Clinton and Netanyahu as well, having very heated discussions. Less reports about Obama, but yeah, I don't know if there's many reports about it, but I know Obama was probably the most aggressive towards Netanyahu from what I've been told. Do you think it's the same with Trump? But Trump is the most popular in Israel, so maybe he has more leverage.
Yeah, he has a boatload more leverage because he is extremely popular in Israel. He's doing what Israel wants, what Netanyahu wants. That great anecdote that Obama said about Netanyahu coming to him and saying, we all have to blitz Israel. We have to blitz Iran. They're going to have a nuclear weapon. And when he turned it down, Netanyahu went for broke. He said, if you don't do this, if you don't come and assist us, we're going to use a nuke on that site. And Obama said, this Obama told this story about 4 weeks ago. And he said, go ahead. Called his bluff. He was like, go right ahead. You'll be a pariah state. You'll be a war criminal. And you still won't achieve your goal. This works on everyone. It doesn't work on everyone except Trump. I absolutely think Netanyahu is playing Trump by making these in-your-face, bold statements of, oh, well, we're not going to listen to you. Who do you think you are, Prime Minister of Israel? But this is Netanyahu trying to corner Trump, despite Trump's bullshit. It is very clear from that phone call, and that phone call was confirmed by Mark Levine, right? Trump's favorite guy, when he started saying, oh, everyone should be charged with treason, whoever leaked that phone call.
You confirmed
that means you confirmed it. But by doing that, what this shows is that Trump is actually very desperate for this war to end, despite all his, I don't care. I don't think about this war. I don't care about the economy. Yeah, you do. Yes, you do. Because if you're going to go after Netanyahu like this, that means you need Lebanon turned off as a source of trouble so that the Iranians, don't, really walk away from this war. But then Trump lies. He's a pathological liar, right? You have to factor that in. Next breath, he says, oh, the Iranians are still calling us. No, they're not. You're hearing from the Pakistanis who are also frustrated from you. You're hearing from, it's like when Trump said that he talked to Hezbollah, the representatives of Hezbollah. You talked to Nabi Berri. Okay, that guy runs Amal. He has the phone number of guys in Hezbollah, but he is not the leadership of Hezbollah. Trump will only talk to people who wear suits, like Nabi Berri, right? So in his mind, he views this as I'm speaking to the Ayatollah, or I'm speaking to these characters. And he is, in fact, talking to himself. Point A, point B, that's where the discussion is happening. And the worst part is it all proves itself true. Like he said to the Iranians, if you ignore all of Trump's tweets, his actions with Netanyahu panicking tells you he really wants Lebanon turned off because he wants this deal. And the only way he's going to get this deal is if the Iranians play ball with him, and maybe he can get them to give up the nuclear material, which is not going to happen either.
Just to give you quickly here, initial reports of fighter jets over Tehran, the capital of Iran. They are unlikely to be American or Israeli and are likely instead to be Iranian Air Force aircraft. The same Iranian Air Force that was completely obliterated. Remember how he posted yesterday? He posted about how there's a full ceasefire in Lebanon, and then we get Israeli media saying, we don't know what he's talking about, and then strikes happening between Hezbollah and Israel. But he was talking about a full ceasefire. But it's just weird. It's just odd. It's just a bit too extreme. Like, okay, I understand you want to control the rhetoric, but like there's limits to it.
Yeah. Well, hey, first let me talk about these aircraft over Iran. It's 0430 where you're at in Iran at 30 minutes, right? So 500 a.m.
Minus, I think 4.
Minus.
Minus
Oh, is it
30
minus 30? Okay.
Yeah.
And
so.
so 330. These are likely not Iranian aircraft. I think there may be some Israeli or U.S. aircraft doing these thunder runs. All they have left from that underground air base that they have are F-5 Freedom Fighters, visual aircraft, right? They don't generally operate without ground controlled intercept and in communications. They ain't gonna fly at night. That's seat of your pants flying, right? You have a better chance of flying into a mountain than you have getting up there. Second, and the other aircraft are the F-4 Phantoms, ancient ass 70-year-old aircraft. Great aircraft in their day. There are no F-14s left over. So it's either one of two things. It's U.S. or Israeli aircraft or cruise missiles that just haven't landed yet. They sound just like jets. Or a jet-powered drone. Yeah. So, yeah, of course. The first missile, I'm famous for that cruise missile attack in Lviv, where I said, "Hey, are there jets up?" I thought there were jets. It was cruise missiles right over our head. So they sound like jets.
No fighter jet activity over Tehran. So
okay, it's probably a reconnaissance. Could be a reconnaissance aircraft. Could be a reconnaissance drone.
So the other question I have for you is on the. Actually, before I ask you a specific question, where are we now? I haven't asked you to speculate what could happen next. There's been significant developments in the last 48 hours. What's your prediction now?
Yeah.
Has it changed in any way, and in what direction?
No, it hasn't changed in any way. I just find it so funny that Trump wants this public appearance that he does not care how long this energy crisis goes on. There are two sets of devils on his shoulders, as I like to analogize. On one, he has Bibi Netanyahu with a very big pitchfork. On the other, he has all of his friends who are losing an enormous quantity of money. And I don't mean with these little roller coaster fluctuations of oil. I mean real money is being lost when you can't put planting into the ground in Myanmar. Or, there was an great Al Jazeera interview yesterday about this farmer in Burma. He has to auction off or hawk his family possessions to keep his little putt 1950s Russian tractor going because of fuel. It is. And it's starving all of Asia, and it's going to start impacting around the world. This is going to actually impact Trump's friends. As the price of everything goes up and gasoline goes up, people stop consuming. People start flipping the bird at billionaires, and things will get worse. So Trump has them on his other shoulder. And it's just a question of who he's going to listen to at that moment, Netanyahu or the real billionaires.
You think he'll walk away and get a deal?
I don't think we're going to have a deal now. Okay, the end of optimism is here. He has made it very personal that he must have Iran's nuclear material given to him. And maybe at some other point he'll say, okay, we'll let the IAEA in there and do their inspections. We will, but that whole bullshit about only America and China can dig out those tunnels. Bro, they use tunnel digging machines like they use to build the English Channel, okay, to get under these mountains. I'm pretty sure the Iranians don't need you to get down there. They'll use 5,000 guys with 5,000 dump trucks with 200 backhoes, and they will get that material. And then they'll have a big party downtown Tehran, carrying their nuclear materials around. That being said, if he does not, he had an opportunity to take this off ramp 4 weeks ago, which was Strait of Hormuz goes back to normal. We discuss everything over 60 days. We get our $12 billion in reparations from Qatar, not from you. But every time he runs into these idiots, Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, Marco Rubio, Lady Lindsey Graham, every time they open their mouths, they go, you're going to be worse than Obama. And then you see Israel comes out. Twice has criticized him for being weaker than Obama. Well, that's all you got to say is when the black guy did it, he cannot, he's such a racist. He cannot abide by the very fact that he's doing something that is not bigger, better, stronger than Barack Obama. They're at 60% uranium, which they started enriching in 2018, the minute he tore up the JCPOA. They were like, hit the centrifuges, boys. We're going from 3.67% to 90%. They got to 60%, and we're lucky that they can get that if we can get some of that material back. But he did this. He allowed Iran to run willy-nilly over us. And you know why? Because what was in his head? Netanyahu and let's just bomb them. Well, now we've done it. We've bombed them. You can't do anything else. 18 scuba tank-sized containers are missing in a country that is the size of the entire American Midwest.
A lot of guests are telling me, a lot of people are starting to speak, Ted Postal being one of the louder voices, and others talking about a high likelihood that Iran already has a nuclear warhead, at least one, if not more, maybe a few. Is that, how possible do you think that is?
Yeah, that's
I'm
Larry
hearing
Johnson.
it a lot. Larry Johnson said it. Colonel Larry Wilkinson said it.
Yeah,
and Ted Postal said it.
Yeah, I like Larry Wilkinson. He's a pretty sober guy. But I said this very early on in the war. If I were Iran, okay, I would be doing the Saddam Hussein thing. When Israel attacked the Osirak nuclear power plant in 1979, Iraq was not on the pathway to an atomic bomb. And when Saddam Hussein saw how serious the Israelis were, they would fly over there, bomb that power plant. He went on a jihad, full-scale mission to get Iraq a bomb. He built that, rail gun with Gerald Bull. He just went right after it. If I were Iran, I would have already taken as much of that 60% uranium. You can detonate a bomb with 60% uranium. It's just going to be the size of a small truck, right? Iran wants a miniaturized plutonium core or uranium core with a high explosive core around it in order to do fusion that can fit onto the warhead of a Khorramshahr 4 ballistic missile. When they marry up a nuclear warhead that works, emphasis on works, to a Khorramshahr ballistic missile, Israel won't be able to do anything against them, right? It's because you won't mention it to anybody. You won't mention it until you have 5 of them. But to do that, you need 90% enriched uranium. The question here, and that would take another year for Iran to be running all those centrifuges that they had at Natanz and Fordow in order to get to that point. We don't know if you were smart, they would have put aside centrifuge parts and should be secretly running centrifuges somewhere, right? Get to one. But if they did, the easiest thing in the world, a high school students can do it, university students can do it. Detonate a bomb. Take it out to the Baluch Desert, set it up real fast, create your new Iranian Trinity site, and blow one. Because it does not take 90% enriched uranium. Iran is doing that because they want a miniaturized atomic bomb. Or take $1 trillion or, I don't know, $100 billion and go to the North Koreans. They most likely won't do it, but they'll certainly sell you the material to do it. But it has to get there by ship or by airplane in some ways. So if they've got a bomb, if they have one, they need two, because you need to detonate one
exactly,
to show that it works. And then you say, well, we have 6. You got to lie at that point, right?
Yeah, true.
You got to lie at that point, because anything shy of 6, Israel's coming for it, and they'll use a nuke to clear it out. They will not be using high explosives for that.
Agree. Always a pleasure. Thank you for the explanation. Thank you for the analysis.
You have my permission to go to bed. No more ballistic missile alerts till later today.
I'm glad. Thank you so much.
Right,
if there is, I'm sure I'll be calling you.
Inshallah. Okay, bye-bye.
No, inshallah, Malcolm. We don't want the opposite of inshallah. I don't want an alert, so I don't have to call you. We can both have a calm couple of days. All right, guys, this is it for today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. We've just, in this interview with Anthony Aguilar and then Malcolm Nance, we went through the attack on Bahrain and Kuwait. It's been confirmed. Malcolm said about the UAE. There's been reports that the UAE was struck. Also, some reports that there were alerts in Saudi, but I don't think these were true. There was a vessel attack in the UAE. That one I know is true. So these were retaliation for American attacks on Qashm Island, a satellite there, a radar in Qashm Island, as well as a cargo ship last night in Iranian waters that was struck by an American Hellfire missile. So we just covered that escalation that happened today. Larry Johnson was the last interview before Anthony Aguilar. We also discussed it for 30 minutes. And before that, I had a great conversation with Colonel Larry Wilkinson, another favorite guest of mine. And we went through went into a deep discussion. We talked about Israel and what happened yesterday, but more importantly, about whether Iran could have a nuke. And he surprised me in that he believes that there's a high probability that they do. Then I had an interview with Brandon Weichert, talking about the Israel influence of what's happening in Beirut. Before that, I had a great conversation with Colonel Mark Kansian, and we talked about so he's the colonel that came in very knowledgeable about these things. He came in, his office came in with a report about the depletion of the American missile stockpiles. And I had a discussion back and forth with him to try to explain to me, and I wasn't convinced with the explanation. But we went back and forth into how a military, how a military option should even be on the table. And he's talking about how half of the munitions on the American side are still enough to continue the war. And I'm telling him, like, if Iran has 70 to 90% of their missiles and missile launchers, then what more could 50%? If you deplete all the munitions on the American side, it would still, mathematically speaking, not destroy all of Iran's capabilities, not even close. So then how is military action still an option on the table? So we had that back and forth. And before that, the first interview I did was with Praveen to discuss how this is connected to Ukraine, the geopolitical ramifications, linking it all to what happened yesterday between the US and Israel, Trump and Netanyahu, and how that impacts this war, and how it impacts the Ukraine war, and how that impacts China. Just how significant it is if Israel manages to sabotage this deal, this ceasefire, the ramifications that would have on the world. So we had that conversation before then. And then lastly, Azzy had two great conversations, one of them with Matthew Ho, a regular on the show. She had 3. And she also had one with the 8200, former 8200 member Shael Ben Ephraim, who's a regular on the show. again, talking about the developments yesterday between Trump and Netanyahu. And lastly, she had a guest for the first time. His name is Jonathan Sahe. He's a research analyst at FDD. So she had a guest from the FDD come on the show and have that conversation. So a lot of episodes to watch, discussing a lot of topics. If you've got time, you can go through them. Otherwise, obviously, I need to sleep. I'll go through the comments as I prepare myself to go to bed. Hope you enjoyed the coverage today, guys. Bye-bye.